Hello, friends. I'm looking forward to talking about something really important, something very close to my heart. That is the definition of religious abuse. And with that, what is the role of power in the definition of religious abuse? I think this will help us to understand a really difficult concept. As a society, we are still trying to get our heads around what is this thing. Religious abuse has been around for millennia, but we are just now starting to put language to it and call it abuse. To start off with, there are three very fundamental elements of religious abuse. They are power, control, and manipulation. These form the foundation of the definition of religious abuse. Abuse is not just being mean to someone. Abuse has to do with power, with one person or institution having more power than another. So let's look at the definition. I've created a definition here that is quite dense, but I think it explains very explicitly what this thing is that we call religious abuse. So by definition, any abuse consists of some type of power differential, where one person has more power than the other and hurts the other person with that power. This is true of spiritual abuse. Now, interestingly, this power can be perceived or real. Interesting, right? This power can be held by one religious person, a small group of religious people, a large group of religious people, or this power can be held by the implicit rules of the whole religious organization. So the abusive person or institution has some sort of power that the abused person does not have. And the abuser uses that power, usually leveraging religious ideas or the idea of God, to manipulate, control, hurt, exploit, suppress, silence, or weaken the other person. Now that's a really dense definition, but I think it's going to help us wrap our heads around what we're talking about when we talk about religious abuse. The idea of God or a religious idea is used by a powerful entity to manipulate, control, hurt, exploit, suppress, silence, or weaken another person. Well, let's talk for a minute. I think central to this idea in the definition is power differential. Differences of power. There are multiple ways in which a person or an institution can have more power than another. So let's go through a list of these, because a lot of times we might be able to come up with some of these, but we might miss some really possibly subtle but significant power differences. So the first thing is a power differential can be by power of position or control, of a position of authority or control. So for instance, if we're speaking of religious abuse, this in church circles, this could specifically be pastors, priests, denominational leaders, speakers, teachers, board members, Sunday school teachers, small group leaders. All of these can be they can have more power by virtue of their position of authority. That automatically gives power and control to that person. May I say right here too, power is not a dirty word. We all have power in some form or another, and the issue with power is like money. It depends on how you use it. Money can be dirty, or it can be used for beautiful purposes. Same thing with power. So power in and of itself is morally neutral. The issue is what you're going to do with it. So all we're talking about is who has more power than another person. Now, most of these are, a lot of them are neutral, but some of them are very problematic. So the next idea is a person can have more power than the other by a demographic or a group of demographics. So, for instance, age difference is a demographic. In our culture here in the West, often the age, children have less power and less power, and as you increase in age, you get more and more power, unfortunately, until a certain point when you become older and society kind of takes that power away. In Eastern cultures, power continues to be given to the elders, to the elderly. In our culture, unfortunately, it tends to drop off. By the way, I've said unfortunately before I was actually getting to that age. So age difference, depending on where you're at in the spectrum, you have more power. A 40-year-old has more power than a 12-year-old. That's pretty straightforward. Gender. Those of you who are women know which way this rolls, okay? And there are always exceptions to these. But as a general rule, the demographic of gender, we live in a very patriarchal society that has historically been ruled by men. Men have held the power. Men have held the power about to say who even gets to have power. So, age difference, gender, marital status. Oh my goodness, you put this in the church and in religious institutions, as a general rule, married people have more power than single people. No good reason for it. Doesn't have anything to do with actual value or character or anything else. But marital status is a demographic that tilts, that most of the time tilts the power differential. Race, so unfortunate, so, to me, deeply wrong. But race, especially in the church, white people generally have more power. And I'm just saying it like it is. I think it's highly problematic and morally wrong, but it is the way the power flows in this situation. Sexual orientation. Oh my goodness. The LGBTQ movement and individuals within that realm have very little power within religious institutions. I'm not making a theological statement here. I'm just saying that's the way it usually is, almost across the board. Another demographic is education. Who has a higher education? They may have more power. I always say I think it's interesting that medical doctors end up being on church boards. Why? They've got an education. That does not necessarily make them qualified for church leadership, but that's how it ends up happening. And there again, I think that's just interesting. Why? Power for education. Okay. All right. So there's that set of demographics. So the third thing, the way there can be a power differential is power by use of physical force, intimidation, or a weapon. Now, I think some of you are going, oh, that doesn't happen in a church or in a religious institution. Oh, yes, it does. It absolutely does. Very sad. But my story had intimidation with a weapon involved. And sometimes there's physical intimidation and physical force. The fourth way is power by a position of financial, academic, or career control over a person. So if a leader or an institution has control of a person's finances, in other words, if they're employed by the institution, that's a position of financial control. Church staff members, that's a position of financial control. I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just saying it is. Academics, oh my goodness, when we're talking about universities, high schools, all this, and if somebody says you have to do this religious thing to get your degree or to get an A, that is power by academic control. And maybe not even a religious thing. You know, there's stuff blowing up with sexual assault by professors. You know, I'll give you a good grade if you sleep with me. Horrible. So power by the position of academic control or career control. You know, who can I open doors for your career? Can I shut doors and stop your career? I'm thinking of denominational leaders, mission leaders, those sorts of things. So that fourth thing is power by position of financial, academic, or career control. The fifth is, this sounds more nebulous, but boy does it count. Power by position, by personal presence. All right, there's all kind. I got a list under here. The idea of a personal presence carrying power. Physical appearance. Let's face it, attractive people end up carrying more power than unattractive people. Wrong, not right, but it's the way it is most of the time. Just a plain powerful personality. Some people just have forceful, powerful personalities. Again, I'm not saying this is wrong. This one's not wrong. It just is. So that personal presence that has a powerful personality. There can be power differential of a person who's skilled at manipulating. Some of us who are innocent and are straightforward and speak our mind and kind of just say what we're thinking are often really taken aback by people who are skilled at manipulating. And that's part of personal presence. There's a subtlety with that. There's a power, okay, in churches, I call it informally influential. Let's say you have this good old grandma, great grandma whose father started this church, and she carries no position of authority structurally in the church, but if she says that the new carpet color should be blue, people listen. Okay, that's the informally influential in religious institutions. Then also sometimes people have control over your reputation. They can ruin your reputation or build it. And then sometimes they have control over your social support, whether you can have good social support and where, or whether you can't. So all of that falls under this power by personal presence. The last one is power by having been given trust. This is just, it sounds so basic, but we give power and influence to each other all the time. It's partly how we connect, and it is a good thing to do if that other person is worthy of the power. So if I give trust to someone, they need to be worthy of that trust. So I can give power to another person just by giving them trust and allowing that. A lot of times that's not bad. Frankly, I've given my friends and family a lot of trust in my life. Most of the time they've been quite trustworthy. And I give them power with that. And that creates a potential power differential. So let's review these again real quick. The first thing is the power, this set of 6 power differentials is power by position of authority or control. All right, so pastors, teachers, board members, okay? Number 2, power by demographics. And under that, we have age differences, genders, marital status, race, sexual orientation, and education. Third set is power by use of physical force, intimidation, or a weapon. And then the fourth one is power by position of financial or academic or career control. And the fifth is power by personal presence. All those different things. Appearance, personality, ability to manipulate, all those things. Then 6 is power by just having been given trust. There's so many other factors that can be included in power differential, but these are some of the very basic ones that I wanted you to be aware of, especially as it relates to religious abuse. These are the dynamics and the definition of this thing we call religious abuse.